Mergers and acquisition deals across Africa's oil and gas upstream sector hit a new record of $21 billion in 9 months. Africa's M&A deals across the upstream segment have increased by about 200% from $7 billion in 2021 to $21 billion in the 9 months through September 2022, according to Rystad Energy. Nigeria, which is home to the continent's second largest oil reserves, is not at the party. We investigate that plus more. Joining us to discuss further, Janet Ogabi, who's a senior research analyst with Tellimer. Janet, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to first touch on the floods and I guess if you can talk us through what's the impact of LNG declaring this force majeure.
Yes, hi Rochus, thank you for having me. It's pretty clear. It's very interesting that they declare the force majeure now. So the peculiarity with NLNG operations is it's situated in Bonny Island, and that is where we've over the past few months, past few weeks, we've heard of the operations that have basically ground to a halt there because of oil theft. There's been very little to no evacuations of oil and gas, and because the gas feedstock for NLNG is associated gas from oil production activities in that area. That has basically been ground to a halt for a few weeks now. Because of the oil theft. We have the likes of even, Seplat with their eastern assets there, the OML 53, they also have to, record some losses on oil theft. So even before the flooding activities that recently came up last week, we've had, activities ground to a halt there. But the floods do have, impact as far as, the 6 trains of NLNG are concerned. And, it's definitely affecting the operations according to NLNG representatives. But it's interesting that that's the excuse cited at this time.
With these, if we use the floods and take it at face value, with these recurrent floods, do you think there's any infrastructure changes the gas players can make to protect their assets in the future?
As far as, infrastructure is concerned, yes, it's definitely something that they'll probably, take more seriously going forward. As far as, infrastructure protection is concerned, one of the major causes of the floods has been the opening of the dam in Cameroon, and there have been calls to, set up buffer dams that would reduce the impact of these openings in Cameroon going forward. So that's definitely an essential infrastructure that you could say would have broader impacts, not just on oil assets, but on flooding as in general. But these assets are situated in damp areas. These assets that, referring to the oil and gas assets, they're situated in swampy and, riverine areas. So, I think it's almost inevitable that whatever is going to affect, those areas is going to also affect them as well. Right, so I think it's a smarter approach to handle or face the situation head on from from a more holistic approach.
All right, speaking of a holistic approach, the dam in Cameroon, one reason, but torrential rain has also been blamed for this, and climate change has come up with respect to the floods. Does this in any way at all accelerate the energy transition conversation?
It does take it a notch higher. And interesting that this is coming up just a few weeks to COP27 coming up in Egypt. And, it just makes it more glaring. There was a statement that was made over the weekend at the World Bank meetings, by the minister in Benin or Niger, I believe. His thoughts were everybody kind of sees climate change theoretically, but this is something that is very practical to us in Africa, particularly in West and Central Africa. So it definitely brings, the discussions on climate change back to the fore. And it gives, African leaders an edge, going forward with the claims for most of these rich countries to pay up on or to meet up with their promises on $100 billion, discussions that have been held in the past. The agreement was, some of these countries that have emitted so much gas, not just, we're seeing the repercussions here in Nigeria. We're seeing it's basically bringing this whole climate change discussion home, right? So, ahead of COP27 in November, it definitely gives African leaders an edge to more push back or push forward the discussions on rich countries, meeting up with their promises to support some of these struggling economies as we face repercussions as far as, climate change is concerned. So it definitely brings it forward. It makes it more real. As far as the Sahel countries are concerned, we've heard of droughts going on in certain areas. And we're now seeing floods going on. So it definitely drives the whole discussion home.
All right, so we've talked climate change, but now we're going back to fossil fuels. So Nigeria seems to be missing from the upstream M&A deals across the continent. You saw, according to, I think, Rystad Energy, 7 billion to 21 now. Why are we missing out, Janet?
So, I mean, it's pretty clear. I mean, we've just come up discussions about oil tech activities in, take for instance, in Bonny Island. We've heard of increasing oil theft so far this year, and we've also heard of the efforts that have been put in by NNPC and the head to try and mitigate this risk going forward. And we also have a standpoint where oil companies, as much as we just discussed climate change, and then there's a whole ongoing discussion of how to clean up their operations, how to ensure their operations are clean, and then we are here struggling with oil theft, we're struggling with leakages, pipeline leakages, and these are things that the IOC have been criticized of, over the years. So it's definitely, it shows how much loss we are having as far as oil and gas investment is concerned. And, that we're even speaking from an international standpoint. We had a deal that should have come up this year, speaking to the Seplat and the ExxonMobil deal that could have, sealed, at least had a deal for us going on for this year for $1.2 billion. But because of our own because of the idiosyncrasies that we have and the peculiarities that we have with our own operating system, that's also a challenge. So it just shows that the oil and gas economy, as far as Nigeria is concerned, is definitely missing out. And the interesting bit is we have a lot of new bigs on the continent that are coming up. In Eastern Africa, I mean, the article cites a lot of examples in Angola. You heard of the Azula Energy between the agreement between BP and ENI as well. We have a lot of projects coming up. Even neighboring Senegal is also expected to deliver first gas next year. We have Mozambique, we have Tanzania, who are also, up in the game as far as oil and gas assets is concerned. And even as it stands, Nigeria is no longer top oil and gas, oil producer. We've been beat down by Algeria, beat down by Angola, and even Libya, who is also recording some recovery. So as an investor, you're coming from a standpoint of trying to ensure you're going in for, cleaner operations. You're also going in for where it's easier to operate, oil and gas assets going forward, or operate oil and gas investments. And not to even mention the challenges we have with our FX.
Indeed. Can the Petroleum Industry Act turn any of this around?
I mean, it remains to be seen. We've definitely not seen that, help us in any way. We had the oil and gas, we had the act passed last year. And what we've seen instead is many of the IOCs have opted and, packed their bags to leave, to exit their operations here in Nigeria. And even the exit is proving a challenge, like we've seen with Seplat deal. So, it just show that it goes beyond, any fiscal incentives that could probably come on board. And the fact is, they are probably seeing a way of, having cheaper greenfield assets in some of these countries that I have talked about, right? So we're more or less at a competitive disadvantage, despite the PIA that we have going for us at the moment. So that's definitely not helped us so far, and we'll just wait to see how that pans out. But it doesn't look like it's enough to convince many of the IOCs to stay back or to even bring in their monies to invest in our assets.
Great stuff. Janet Ogabi, Senior Research Analyst, Tellimer. Always great talking energy with you, Janet. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time.